I will now call to order the Tuesday, May 8th, 2012 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. Welcome to all of you here at Carnegie Town Hall, those viewing us on CityLink or at siouxfalls.org. We will start the meeting with a staff report from our city clerk, Lori Hogstead.
Thank you, Council Chair Aguilar and City Council members. Our most exciting news of this past week has been our City Clerk's office renovation. If you have not seen our offices yet, you must stop by. They look fantastic. The workspace is much better. No more walls, no more tall dividers amongst us. The light's shining in, and we're enjoying the beautiful use of that room, as well as much, much better customer service as people can see us as they come in and we can see them as well. So stop by, take a look. That's our excitement for the week and took up most of our week. That's the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Lori. We'll now have a report from Councilor Brown on last Tuesday's fiscal committee meeting.
We had three issues we discussed. First of all, we continued the discussion on revised pension funds, specifically with future employees. We had a representative from South Dakota Retirement System here to talk about the possibilities of Sioux Falls joining into that system. So we had a good discussion on that. And then we also talked about the CIP, the $4 million, the supplemental money. We did set the date for the next council work session, which would be May 21st. Councilor Erpenbach, what time did we settle on for that? Do you remember?
6:30.
Is it? Oh, we juggled around times. I apologize. It is 6:30.
So 6:30, May 21st will be the work session to discuss that, the extra $4 million in the CIP. And Councilor Jamison and Councilor Karski also reported on their efforts to long-term work on revising and bringing back the CIP committee that is referenced in ordinance, and so that was discussed. And then David Bixler also brought forth an idea to really standardize the reporting methods, the financials, for organizations or companies that manage city-owned facilities for us. So we're always comparing apples to apples when each group comes forward and talks about their financials on city-owned facilities. And the committee gave him the go-ahead to put that together. So that's what happened.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilor Brown? If not, Councilor Rolfing, a report on last Monday's Land Use Committee meeting.
Most of the Land Use Committee was taken up with the Urban Ag subcommittee or task force. They brought forward the final parts of the ordinance now for the urban gardens, and we pass that on to the Planning Commission, who will give further consideration to it, and they will bring it back to this body, assuming that they pass it, so that we can okay that or make changes to it if this body feels it's necessary. That process went very smoothly, went very nicely, and we hope to use the same process now going forward as we're getting into the animal part of the urban agriculture. We started that about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and this next a week and a half from now, on the 18th of May, we will begin in earnest the process of doing some definitions and some other parts of the animal portion of that ordinance, and we're looking forward to that and using the same type of process. So, going smoothly, and hopefully by the end of the summer, somewhere in there, early fall, we'll have an ordinance that we can bring to you for final disposition.
Thank you.
Anything else to add? Any one of the task force or committee members? Thank you.
Any questions for Councilor Rolfing? If not, thank you, Councilor. We'll now go on to City Council open discussion. Any items to bring forward? Quiet group this afternoon. If no council open discussion, we'll go on to today's presentation, and we'll call on Director Mark Cotter to begin the presentation for us.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, Council Chair and council members. All right, kind of had automatic play button there. I'm Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. We thank you for the ability to bring the monthly update on the Event Center today. We have a lot to show you as many things have progressed over the recent months. One of the key milestones that we've been working toward, which was on April 27th, was to reach 100% design development drawings. And for a fact, we were going to have them brought up, but they weigh so much that we thought that we would just have them up here. But this isn't multiple sets of the building. This is one set of the current design of the building. It's just short of 800 plan page sets of details. Okay.
Council?
So there's 800.
Go ahead. Sit it down. Lift it.
That's right. There's 800 plan pages, and there's just short of 1,900 specification pages that really start to tie not only what this will look visually, but all the respective details of what it'll take to build this new facility for the City of Sioux Falls. This really generates a process of very thorough review because the architecture teams, Mortensen, our own teams, our citizen committees with the design elements and the facility tenant really have put a lot of time into this point, but now it really starts to, now we'll really start to review this plan set and dig into the plan set. I do want, from public works standpoint, I have two individuals here that I want to highlight. Shannon Verhey, Assistant City Engineer, he's on our public works team. And Terry Van Dyke, he will be full-time on this project throughout the design and construction. Robbie Venerick's also on the team. He could not be here today. So thanks to those gentlemen. They will have an integral part in the design and construction of this facility. The other critical piece to having design development drawings is that last month we talked to you about the best value selection approach for 6 key packages that were currently out for bid. And those contractors worked off initial plans of the building, and now they are able to access these 100% design development drawings so they can start to do formal takeoffs and ultimately submit a bid for that work in May. So there's 6 key packages that will start to make selections of contractors after we receive their proposals in May and then move into June for that selection process. Before we bring the Mortensen team forward for really what is the focus of this month's update, we want to take you through a couple of projects that are tied to the Event Center, which is the Offsite new trunk sewer, as well as the McCart fields. And so we have just a couple of slides that we want to take you through here first. This is the Offsite trunk sewer that will tie in north of Russell Street off to the right, and then progress to the west. That's the green section. And essentially building the event center here needed more capacity. And so this was one of the key projects that was included in the original project. And so this is a plan set that's in for review right now. We'll be bidding it very soon, and it'll be completed by November of this year. The orange, that's just a delineation of what we consider on-site and off-site, but they're both tied to the Event Center project. Okay. Next project is the additional parking that's being added at the Earl McCart fields, and we've had good discussions with the Park and Rec team, specifically Don Kearney. We also met with the McCart sisters on the site to review the proposed plan and have gotten good feedback from them. Next week, the Park Board will see the proposed project, and our intention at this point, our anticipated letting schedule is in June, and our completion is by mid-October to add this parking to the McCart fields, and it will add just short of 300 additional spaces. Next slide. One of the things that when we were working with the McCart sisters is that we wanted to make sure that we recognize the McCart family, and so one of the features that is being added right near the existing playground in this park is a sign that will highlight their family's name right at a focal point in this park. So it's been a good working process. All right, now I'd like to introduce to you the Mortensen team led by Dan Mells, Greg Huber, and Jason Miranowski, and they're going to take you through the schedule as well as the 4D visualization of the event center. There's been questions this week is what is 4D, and that essentially is when you take a 3D image view of what a building will be like when it's being constructed, and you add the schedule, you get that 4D element. And so this is one of those key aspects when you hire a team like Mortensen that does this scale of project and has these types of capabilities that really allow you to lay out the construction of the facility in the most efficient and cost-effective manner, and also make sure when subcontractors are being coordinated, it's being done in a very safe and effective manner. So with that, I'd like to bring forward Dan Mills.
Thank you, Mark. Madam Chair, members of the council, it's good to see you all again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation today, and then once we get through it, we'll open it up for questions. Every question is fair. We try to visualize everything. Well, most every question is fair, Greg. We try to, relative to construction, we try to create images that help visualize the project and the challenges of the project, but it doesn't capture everything. So please don't hesitate to ask us questions. But it's pretty exciting, I have to tell you. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, working with the design team. Sink Homes and Coke Hazard have designed just an absolutely fabulous building, and we've been supporting them along the way, developing detailed construction schedules, doing cost studies as they evaluate different material types, having our construction folks do constructability reviews to evaluate, how the building itself will be built, putting together phasing plans and safety plans and quality plans, all of that stuff we have to do behind the scenes that will then roll out once we get into construction. So all of that has been in the works, but if everybody looks at your calendar, 10 weeks from now, the city's vision is going to be realized. 10 weeks from now, our hands are going to start getting dirty, and we're going to start breaking ground and start building this facility. So that's pretty exciting. It is absolutely right around the corner. So I need your help, though. I need each one of you to review this complete set of drawings and get back to me with any comments by next week, and then we'll have a quiz on that. But actually what we are doing on your behalf is we're reading every single page in this, and we're putting together a very detailed cost estimate to reflect these drawings. So as we look at our bar chart schedule here, once the vote was approved, the design team did a quick refinement of the schematic design, and then in January launched into design development. And so through January and March and April, the design team has been developing the design and developing the geometry of the building, the shape of the building, the floor-to-floor heights, where the stairs go, where the escalators go, sight lines, retractable seating, elevations, materiality, and so forth. And all of that is coming together now, or has come together in this set of documents that was finished up last week. So the design team couldn't be with us today. They're all sleeping. They've been burning the midnight oil for the last few weeks to pull this great set of drawings together. So now we launch into a full detailed cost estimate, and that's what we'll be doing over the next month as we go through each page of the drawings. We'll put together a very detailed, thoughtful cost estimate. We will go to the market and work with local subcontractors to get costing input. And we'll be doing that parallel with what Mark described as the best value selection of certain key subcontractors. So there's a lot of activity going on in the market right now, in the local market right now. And understandably, there might be some confusion. If you're talking to any contractors, they're not quite clear on what they're supposed to be doing, have them call me, have them call Greg, we'll clarify. But we've got parallel efforts going on in the community right now. Some contractors were asking for budget pricing on this set of design development documents. Other set of key contractors, we are actually going through a formal selection process to bring them on board as our partners. And those key subcontractors are mechanical, or let me say HVAC, plumbing and piping, electrical, architectural precast, structural precast, and fire sprinkler contractors. So those 6 contractors we'll be bringing on board here over the next month. So once we get through the estimate and bring those contractors on board, we will then, and we'll establish a guaranteed maximum price. We'll all understand the scope of the project. We'll start moving forward with construction. And right now the plan is to start construction in the 3rd week of July. So that is only 10 weeks away. We will also then, parallel to getting ready for the start of construction, be starting to issue our bid packages. And there'll be 4 additional bid packages outside of the one that's on the streets right now. Bid package 2, which will be the site and foundations, will go out in June. Bid package 3, which is the structural steel, the elevators, some concrete work, and the ice rink, will go out in August. Bid package 4, which is the enclosure around the building and the roofing on top of the building, plus the interior framing of the walls and so forth, will go out in November. And then the final package, which wraps up all of the interiors of the building, will go out by the end of the year. And so there'll be a phased process for finishing the design and procuring the rest of the work. And then, as I mentioned, construction will start in July with a planned completion by the fall of 2013. So we can schedule our first event for fall of 2014, and schedule our first event then for late 2014. So with that schedule overview, I want to introduce, well, you know him already, Greg Huber with Mortensen. Greg has been leading our planning efforts during the design phase. And so Greg and I are going to walk through the phasing of the project. And in order to best describe the phasing and the intent of how we build a project, we've developed the 4D model. It's a 3-dimensional image tied to the schedule being the 4th dimension, i.e. the 4D model. And we find this tool is very beneficial for fleshing out challenges of exactly how we phase the structural work versus the enclosure work versus the interior work. Sometimes we resequence based on this model, and then it becomes a great communication tool to the subcontracting community when they're trying to price the job. So it takes a kind of a large, scary project and breaks it down into manageable pieces so that we can get more competitive prices. So with that, let's go ahead and tee up the image and we'll get it started. And then Jason Miranowski, who we introduced as a construction executive, will be focused on the operations component of our delivery. He's going to be hitting the pause button. That's his role. So, all right. So as you look at it now, before we get started with construction, we first have to secure the site. So the blue walls, as it appears around the perimeter, will actually be temporary site fence. To keep the public safe. It'll also be an opportunity for signage for the city and advertising events and whatever else we might want to do for public information. And then the brown area in the middle is actually a subterranean image of the ground below grade and the rock elevations below grade. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg. He can talk a little bit about the subterranean.
Madam Chair, Council, thanks for the opportunity again. We're really excited to be showing this to you guys. This is the result of a lot of the work of the design team, and we took that model and, again, like Mark said, applied time to it so to be able to visualize construction. And the side benefit of that is that everybody else gets to see our vision right along with us. So what you can see there is the subterranean profile of the rock. Right now what you see on the surface is a parking lot. What actually is under there is a combination of rock that's close to the surface and kind of a valley that runs diagonally through the site, and that was determined through the geotechnical exploration that was conducted by AET about 3 or 4 months ago, and where they probed down to see how far the rock was. So that drove all of our foundation systems, and as we go along and show the foundation construction, you kind of see the differences. So on the bottom line, like Dan said, there's a kind of a time ticker, and that's a direct link to our construction schedule. So as we move along here in mid-July, you'll start to see a little bit of color shading and variance and then what you'll see is some foundations pop up. So on the southeast corner of the site, what you see are two different operations. One on the north side, which is the top of the screen, is where the pile foundations actually take place. So these are long, deep foundations that go to the deep rock and support the building. The other side, on the left-hand side, are shallow foundations where the rock is very, very close to the surface, and those will be placed. So those will be occurring simultaneously. The reason that we're starting when we're starting is so that we can get the concrete work, the foundation work, in the fall, in the summer and the fall, and get that completed, so you don't have to heat the concrete or heat the soil in placing it. And some of the work that you've seen, as well as all the right away, was the site stripping, taking off all the asphalt, bringing in clean fill to place all the foundations around. So at this point, we're about, this is going to be late fall, so there'll be some snow flurries possibly flying around at the same time. We didn't model that, neither did the design team. So you don't see a lot going on. What's going on, if you could hit pause right now, is the structural steel is being made off-site. So there's, even though there's not going to be a lot of visible construction in the late fall, early winter, there's a lot of construction being occurring off-site. There's structural steel fabrication, precast fabrication, and I'll turn it over to Dan to show kind of what happens after that.
So as Greg mentioned, our first motivation is to get the foundation work done before to get too deep into winter. And so now it's January, most of the deep foundation work is done, and the steel starts to show up on site. So we'll start in the southwest corner, and the phasing that we do, or the process that we do, is we'll build sections of steel full height, kind of in chunks as we move around the building. So instead of doing it by floor and in layers, we build it up in sections, in chunks as we move around. And then we stabilize that section of structure with the metal deck and then the concrete slabs. All of this phasing, of course, is reviewed by the structural engineer to make sure that we're not erecting it in such a way that would cause the steel to collapse in any way. So then the reason we're starting in the side that we're starting on is where all of the heavy infrastructure for the building is. All the mechanical rooms and electrical rooms are in that area. So we want to build that area first to allow the maximum amount of time for the mechanical electrical trades to build out the mechanical electrical rooms, to get the freight elevator running. So kind of the heart and soul and lungs of the building are all over on that upper side of the building. So as we keep going with the structure, we'll have a crane that'll sit in the bowl area, and he'll continue to move around and set sections of the building in the different quadrants. And we label all these different quadrants, and we clearly identify all of this in the phasing schedule. And now we're starting to follow along behind with the precast stadia, the concrete seating sections that span between the raker beams that support the seats. That installation, again, is done fabrication is done off-site, but then the installation moves along pretty quickly once they show up on site. So we need to make sure the steel is far enough out in front of the precaster so the precaster doesn't catch them. We're also doing connections now and links to the existing convention center as we move around the building. So the gray areas identify work that's complete. The blue areas identify work that's underway. So if we pause here, one of both a structural feature of the building and an architectural feature of the building are these 4 large cores in each corner of the building. They are structurally necessary to support lateral loads and to support the building and hold it up. They will have a stair tower within those cores, but then on the side facing us right now, it'll also become kind of an inverted horseshoe, which is part of the architectural feature of the building. And it'll be semi-transparent, even with the glass and facade in front of the building. You'll still be able to see that structural upside-down horseshoe, through the facade. Okay, we keep going. So the steel is continuing to go up. We're into April, May, June of next summer. Structure's continuing. You'll notice now that we've left the end of the building out. It dawned on us we had to get the crane out of there. So, so we left the end of the building out for the purpose of being able to allow the crane to come in and out and set the roof trusses. This is why we do modeling, to figure this stuff out ahead of time. Otherwise, it's kind of ugly having to tear the crane apart and drag it out through the building. So, and now we'll start over. It'll pick up. So it's Christmas break now. Everybody's gone for a week. Okay, now we're coming back, catching up. Crane's moving around. It is kind of interesting to watch this when we don't pause it. And we'll do that at the end here. We'll just let the whole thing play through. It's about 3 minutes long. So the structure's pretty much up. We'll leave the end of the building out. And once those 4 core towers are up and the structure is set and stabilized, we can start setting the roof trusses. And so pretty quickly here we'll be setting the roof trusses. Why don't you go ahead and talk about roof trusses and enclosure?
Yeah, so you can see, so a key component of arena construction is the management of really all of this big stuff, all these big trusses, all of the big cranes, and this is another portion of what it helps us do. So once the majority of the precast gets set, then you'll see a lot of the big steel going up, and it'll go very quickly because most of it's prefabricated in long roof sections. For example, the section up there, the big blue truss as you see it, is 272 feet long and weighs about 190,000 pounds or so. So it's a large piece of steel that gets set, so all of this will go quickly. And what we do is we pick and carry those large sections, whether they're bridging sections or some of these large trusses. So as we go along, we'll kind of turn the show back to structural steel as they get all of these large roof sections in place, and then we'll be backing out of the bowl. So at this point, we're decking and then filling in the western part of the building. You can see the crane is actually outside of the building, and we'll construct that 42-foot wide piece of structure last. Build that up, set the precast, and then we'll put the lid on. All the while, what you haven't really been able to see is on the north side, there's been a lot of enclosure activity. There'll be a lot of precast, metal panels, windows, all of that will happen just in the sequence of the structure. That's how we'll finish the building. So we'll finish start in the northwest corner, go clockwise, and that's how you'll see it get finished. So as we continue to go then, the roof will get finished and to the west, and then we'll start working on the south side, again, in the sequence of the order of construction of the structure. And then we're targeting is about, middle, end of October, so for it to be fully enclosed. And at that point, you'll be wondering, what are you guys doing? Because it'll be closed up, and there won't be a lot of apparent progress after that, except for there'll be a lot of site work, landscaping after the fact. But once it gets fully enclosed, there'll be a lot of interior work with all of the locker rooms, concourses, suites, etc., getting finished. So, and that's about it. I think that's about the end of the animation.
So we'll pull it back and start it again and just let it roll through the whole thing here quick.
So as we're going through here and you see some things pop up, you can certainly say, what's that? Oh, sure. So right now, this is in about October of 2012, so that's this fall, where all of the foundations will be placed. And earlier, back basically in the middle of July, again, like Dan said, we'd be starting construction, and you'd see a lot of earth-moving equipment, stripping off the asphalt, putting in a couple feet of sand. And then here, it's about in December, end of December, and first part of January is when the steel arrives. So really kind of just first part of 2013 is when the structural steel will arrive. the northwest quadrant will begin. So in about March or so is when we'll start precast. And so at this phase, simultaneously, we're erecting structural steel, we're roughing in mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, and then continuing around the kind of the chase around the bowl from the northwest corner clockwise. Then continuing around structural steel on the south side, so that's end of April or so. Southwest corner precast gets installed, structural steel, actually southwest corner of structural steel and the precast on the south side. And then right at the end of June, beginning of July, is when we'll be setting the big structural steel. A lot of that structural steel you actually see getting assembled on site. There's large sections that can go over the road, and then all of that get assembled on site as well. So you'll see a lot of that structural steel, especially on the west end of the job. So right now we're in about mid-September when we start closing up that roof, erect the leave-out section, assemble that, put precast in, and then in early October, finish the enclosure and put the lid on. So by the end of October, early November, we're completely enclosed, doing finishes, and completing the building. Then in 2014 is when a lot of the site work, we plan to do a lot of the site work. There might be some phasing to be arranged with the convention center and those operations, but that's when you'll see a lot of the improvements is the summer of 2014. And then set up for a completion in the fall.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Any questions? Or do you have something else then?
No, just if you have any questions, we do have the project team here that we can do our best to address.
Councilor Karski.
Very impressive demonstration of the four-dimensional. I kind of was wondering what the fourth dimension was. Now I know. Curious on the staging. Where is the staging of materials, equipment, and that type of thing going to occur at? It's going to be a big project and a lot of stuff.
It's a large project and it's a big building for a small site. It's an extremely tight site. Some staging will happen on site, but not very much. We'll have to set up just-in-time delivery for most of our materials, and we have to make it clear to our contractors that they will have to find off-site storage and bring only the materials to the site that they need that given week, because there just isn't room on site for a lot of storage.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Anderson.
I know we have a lot of good qualified construction people, but on this building being such a big steel building, are we going to have to bring in some steel building contractors to do that, or are we able to do that all here ourselves?
We believe we're able to do that here ourselves with local and regional contractors. It is a big steel job, but we've talked to the local steel contractors and they feel comfortable that they can handle the job.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Jameson.
Couldn't let you get away, Dan.
I know.
I know you've covered this before, and I know we've heard it. I need to hear it again, though. I don't have it here. When you work on the full detail cost estimates, and you're out there getting bids, and you've already given us a guaranteed maximum price of $115. Somewhere along the way, this has got to cross. Just like building a home, when you get an estimate to build a home, and when you start building it, and then other things happen, and it costs more. Nevertheless, how do we determine, and who determines? I had this conversation with Mark Cotter a little bit, and I'm not sure I got a clear answer, but who decides at the point when, if it's $115 million, your estimates come in and it shows it's 120, you've got provisions and we've got some things that allow you to remove certain items, right? Who decides what items get in exchange for other items? So we don't sacrifice seat quality, but we give up something else. Who decides that?
Right. There are some decisions that are just sound engineering decisions that really don't affect the function of the building or the aesthetics of the building in a meaningful way, and that's what you rely on your design team and your construction manager to make those decisions, and quite frankly, we're making those decisions every day. But there will be a handful of value decisions that the city will need to weigh in on. Do we do this ad alternate, which might increase the aesthetics, or do we do this alternate, which could increase revenue generation, or this alternate, which could improve operational efficiency? So the architect's job and our job is to give you the information so that you can make an informed decision, but the city's core team will make those ultimate decisions. And after that, I'd have to turn it over to Mark from who that would be.
Well, and I apologize. I thought that I did give you a straight answer. And so let me just maybe try it in a different way. There is a building that's being designed, and as we move through, we are developing a list of ad alternates. And then our approach from the beginning was to have a core team, a project team, and then ultimately leverage two community citizen-driven community leaders that we can bring these ideas to, so they can help us make these selections. And so there is really a vetting process as we get to that point, and we'll know a lot more here in about another 6 weeks with the cost of the facility and where the cost of the building is, and to see to what extent those decisions are. But from what we hear very commonly from Don Deflifs, it's a very common practice where you design your facility. You also, as you progress through the design, have a list of ad alternates, and the facility tenant committee will be saying things like, well, what generates revenue? What enhances the fan experience? The design elements committee will come at it from a different point of view on tying in the overall theme of the facility. And so you get to a point where you're weighing both inputs from both committees, and then ultimately move those decisions up through the project team and then the core steering team. But we can certainly keep you abreast of what those ad alternates are as we get to that point, to make sure that you can weigh in on how those have been prioritized.
If you could, the core project team is?
The core project team is made up of myself, Mike Cooper, David Fifley, Darren Smith, Tracy Turback, and Mayor Huther. And then and Kendra Simmons-Ma, sorry. And Karen Leonard. The project team is made up of, both design consultants from Sink Homes as well as Coke Hazard. And then we've had good interactions with both operators since at the early part of this. Both are operating on the campus, and then we have the city team, and so it's been a very good process as we've looked at all the details of the building.
Councilor Anteman.
Mark, at the end of the day, the bottom line is that all the efforts of what you just talked about, the committees and everything that you have, the ultimate goal, of course, is to keep everything in that $115 million. So the decisions that they make when you talk about operations versus aesthetics versus sales, the bottom line is we, the City Council, and the voters, we approved $115 million, and we will not exceed that according to this project. Is that not correct?
That's right. The way it was wrote of using public funds is the $115 million, and that's our budget at this point.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, too. I love the little visual stuff. That's really cool.
You're welcome.
Question then, and I know that we've heard this before as well, Mark, but we need to just kind of remind folks how this is going to work. Talk about when that parking lot is going to be reconfigured, and how will that work around, because Howard Wood's going to be busy at various times and the other facilities there will be busy. How will that reconfiguration work into the scheduling that's going on there?
The one that's on campus or the McCart fields?
Originally, one of the debates we had was there's not enough parking spaces. If we wiggle things around in there, we can put in more cars. So
Right.
when does that happen, and how does it work in the schedule?
Well, those designs are already underway, so that's our first step. And then in likely next month, Mike Cooper will bring you, he's working on the template, because we know once mid-July comes and the fence goes up to cordon off the construction, that we're going to displace current spaces, and that we need to leverage other assets that are in close proximity with a busing service to make sure that we can still meet the parking needs. And so I would probably leave that for next month and have him bring, they've been working diligently on how to offset the loss in those spaces during the construction, and then ultimately during the reconfiguration of those on-site lots. So if that's adequate to wait till next month, I think that would be good.
Yeah, I think that's an important conversation to start having, because each of us is thinking of big events that we either go to or participate in, and we're thinking already the logistics of that process now in our daily lives out there is going to be interesting. My other question then, if I might, Madam Chair, is Western Avenue. We know it's going to get beaten up pretty bad with traffic. Do we then also have a plan for that following this construction period? Will it get a facelift, or how do you think we'll handle that?
Well, that section of Western Avenue is in very good shape. And then, the contractors, they have to meet legal load limits. And so we'll certainly keep an eye on it. We'll certainly impress upon that, everything still has to be load legal. But Western Avenue essentially had significant work from Madison south recently, and then now this year we'll go from 12th Street all the way south to 41st Street with improvements. And so Western Avenue today is actually in very good shape, and we'll just make sure that it maintains that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Could I ask one more, Madam
Sure.
Chair? As you were talking, I was just thinking, what's the truck route going to be? Are they going to come off Madison Street and come across, or will they come down Russell? Maybe both?
I would say maybe potentially both. Both are adequate. There's significant trucking on both today. Both have interstate access.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I would expect that they'll find the closest route.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, do you have anything else?
Just that this video today is also uploaded to the project website, and so if you'd like to go back to it and see it, certainly do so, as well as this presentation. And again, thank you for giving us the time for the update.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before this group? Councilor Anderson, what time would you like to start the Public Services Committee meeting?
5 o'clock, please.
All right. If there's no other business, the Public Services Committee meeting will start at 5 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned.